Hi, my name is Colin Ryan, and this is part two of our first hack. So now we're going to look at mitigation techniques for privilege escalation. So privilege escalation is when an attacker exploits a system to gain elevated access to privileges that should be unavailable to them. So the first technique that I would implement is the principle of least privilege. And so this is making sure users only have privileges that are necessary to perform their job duties. If users have more privileges than they need, an attacker could use this to their advantage once they gain access to the system. Also, I would implement enforcing secure password policies. So I'd make sure that passwords have a minimum required length, they require numbers and special characters, and that employees cannot reuse passwords, and that the passwords have to be changed regularly. And then another technique that I would implement is to just educate employees on social engineering attacks. They need to know how to identify these attacks and report when they may be a victim of an attack. And then the last technique that I would implement is minimizing the attack surface. So this is security patches should be deployed as soon as possible. You should ensure that the correct permissions and files or accounts are used, close any unnecessary ports, monitor all user accounts and activity, and changing the default credentials on all devices. Now we're going to take a look at how I gained access to Keyoptrix 1. So in our Hack Part 1 video from last week, we were able to identify some of the versions that Keyoptrix 1 was using. So we saw that it was using Samba, but we didn't know what version it was. So first we started by running Metasploit in Kali, and we identified that the Samba version was 2.2.1a. So once we had our version, we really just needed to type this into Google and see what we could find. So exploit database lists root exploit for this Samba version and prior versions that works against Linux. So I copied this exploit, pasted it into Kali, and then saved it as 10.c. Once our exploit was inserted and saved onto our Kali, I was able to run this command, and if you look at the lower screenshot, we were able to access our Keyoptrix 1. So now that we exploited Keyoptrix 1 and we were able to get root access, which I verified from the command whoami, which said root, I created a user Ryan with the command add user, and then after I just had to create a new password for this account. Once our new user was added and the password was created, I was able to go to the Keyoptrix 1 login, type in my new user Ryan and the password, and as we can see, it successfully logged into the system. Now we're going to look at some other common cyber attacks. So we have buffer overflow, and this is the amount of data in buffer exceeds storage capacity. The extra data overflows to adjacent memory locations and can corrupt and overwrite data. An attacker could use this to insert malicious code. Then we have privilege escalation, which we discussed earlier. And this attack just exploits a system to gain elevated access that they should be unable to have. And so there's horizontal escalation, which an attacker expands privileges by taking over an account and using their privileges. And then there's vertical, where an attacker gains more permissions or access with the existing account they compromised. And so this could be getting a regular user's account and using that access to get further administration privileges. And then we have rootkits, and this is computer programs that provide continued privileged access to a system while hiding its presence. So these are generally associated with malware. Once they're installed, it has the ability to remotely execute files and change system configurations, and it can also be used to access files. Trojans are a malicious program that appears like a legitimate source. So once these are installed, they damage, disrupt, and steal information on a system or network, and users have to execute a Trojan in order for this to work. Backdoors is an attack that goes around normal security measures to gain access on a system or a network. And these can be installed by the maker intentionally, or they can be from malware, and these are usually discrete. Viruses is malicious software or malware that can spread between systems and networks, and its intent is to cause harm. So, disrupt systems and operational issues and can result in data loss. Typically, these are attached to an executable host file. Return-oriented programming. So an attacker obtains control of a call stack, and then they can control the flow and manipulate the software to their discretion. This attack builds on borrowed code and provides functionality such as loops and conditional branches. They can also use this to make compromised systems perform to their desire. Then last, we're going to look at common social engineering attacks. So this is an attack that just targets individuals to give up confidential information. So we have phishing, and this is just posing as a trusted source to obtain personal or confidential information. Smishing, this is phishing, but using SMS text messages to accomplish this. Spear phishing, which targets specific individuals, and Waterhole, which is posing as a fake source or website or infecting a known source to gain personal information. This is just a quick list of my references, and thank you for listening to my presentation.